Now, some people may be asking, well, how did we get to where we are? How did Trump actually win the election? And here is a point that I think, could be wrong, but I think that most people outside of the United States do not fully appreciate. When we talk about America and the American economy, many people say, "Why, God, you are the wealthiest country on earth. You have the biggest GDP. You're producing all of this stuff. My God, you are so wealthy." Well, in one sense, it is true that in America today, we are the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. That is true. But there is another reality that many people around the world do not understand, is that we have in America today more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of the United States. Today, if you can believe this, one man, Elon Musk, owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of American households. You got that? One man owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of American households. The top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. The CEOs of major corporations now are earning 350 times more than their workers. So when you talk about America being a wealthy society, it is true for the people on top who have never, ever in the history of America had it so good. Explosion of billionaires, they've never, ever had it so good. But what about ordinary Americans, though? How are they doing? And this is what you don't know. What you don't know is that in America today, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. I suspect that concept, paycheck to paycheck, resonates in the UK. You understand what that means? What it means is that people go out to work, and they work often hard and often long hours. And at the end of the week, they are no more further ahead than when that week began. Study just came out recently. It said these 60% of the people in America today are struggling desperately to put food on the table for their kids, to afford housing, because in America we got some 800,000 people who are homeless. We got 20 million households who are paying 50% or more for housing. People living paycheck to paycheck cannot afford to go to a doctor. We do not have a national health care system. We got 85 million people who are uninsured or underinsured with high deductibles. Many people in the UK don't even know what a deductible is, thank God. Because what it is that you may have insurance, but you got to pay the first $10,000 out of your own pocket before the insurance kicks in. And let me, as an aside, beg of you, and I know I know that the NHS has its issues, and there's a lot of debate about where you want to go. But anybody who suggests to you that the way to go is anything close to the American healthcare system is telling you a terrible untruth. Do not follow in that direction. In America, we are spending more than twice as much per person on health care as you are. More than twice as much. And yet we got 85 million Americans, about a third of our population, who are uninsured or underinsured. 68,000 people a year die because they cannot afford to go to a doctor when they get sick. And 1 out of 4 Americans cannot afford the prescription drugs their doctors prescribe. In America, if you are diagnosed with cancer and you undergo treatment, some 25% of the people who undergo those treatments go bankrupt or financially deplete the savings of their family. So all of these issues is what are going on in America today. We are the only major country that does not have paid family and medical leave. There are jobs in America where you got 0 paid vacation time. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major nation on earth. And we have a very, very high rate of senior poverty as well. Something like 20% of seniors in America are trying to survive on $15,000 a year or less. Now, why do I tell you all of that? I tell you all of that because the average American is hurting. He or she understands that the system is broken. They see the rich getting richer while they are struggling, and they understand correctly that everything being equal, their kids will have a lower standard of living than they do. They understand that despite the explosion of technology that we have seen in the last 50 years, the average American worker in real inflation accounted for dollars is earning less than he or she did 52 years ago. And that during that same period, there was a $75 trillion transfer of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. Now, I tell you all of that because you have got to understand that the American people are angry. They are disgusted with the status quo. They see the rich getting richer. They can't afford to buy a home. They can't afford to send their kids to childcare, can't afford to send their kids to college. If you're a worker today and your car breaks down and the mechanic tells you that you got a $1,000 bill, you may not have that $1,000 to get your car repaired. If you can't get your car repaired, you can't get to work. If you can't get to work, you get fired. If you get fired, you can't take care of your family. One of the really saddest realities of the American economy today is not only in America do we live 4 years shorter lives than the average OECD nation. We live 4 years shorter. But in America right now, because of all of that stress that working families are dealing with, the working class, if you're born in the working class, on average, you will have a life that is 7 years shorter than if you're wealthy. And the answer is not just health care, that's part of it. Rich get good health care, working class does not. But it's more than that. It is the stress that people live under every single day, just trying to put food on the family, scared to death that a landlord raises the rent, worries that their job disappears. People live under extraordinary stress, which wrecks the body and wrecks the mind. So I say all of that. That is the background that you got to understand for Trumpism. And then as part of that problem, you have a Democratic Party. Now, I am the longest serving independent in the history of the United States Congress, and I'm proud of that. And I caucus. I'm part of the Democratic caucus, and I sit with the Democrats. But what has to be understood and said plainly, that for the last 40 or 50 years, the Democratic Party in the United States has essentially turned its back on the working class of the United States. And by the way, that is not just an American phenomenon. Social democratic parties all over the world are doing the same. And what the Democrats and what the Kamala Harris, and Kamala is a friend of mine, but what the Harris campaign was about was saying, we are defending the status quo, and we're going to make a few changes here or there. Vote for me. We like the status quo. And working class people were not buying that. And Trump comes along and essentially says, you know what? The whole system is broken. And he has a thing right on the podium. I will fix it. System is broken, and I'm going to tear it apart, and I'm going to fix it. Well, He is right in saying that the system is broken. Unfortunately, his solutions are going to make a terrible situation even worse in terms of the working class of America. Democratic Party, for a number of years, has done a very good job in fighting against bigotry, whether it is racial issues, whether it is gay rights issues, whether it is women's issues. And I will tell you that in the United States, on all of those issues, problems remain. We got racism, we got sexism, we got homophobia, no question. But we have come a very, very long way. Tell you an interesting fact. The Secretary of Treasury right now, which is a very important position in government, U.S. government, is openly involved in a gay marriage, and I think he has a couple of kids. The idea that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, a right-wing Republican administration would have an openly gay person in a position of power would have been beyond imagination. But it is acceptable right now. That's the struggles that we have won. Those are the good, that's the good news. The bad news is that working people all over the country feel betrayed by the Democratic Party, and they have looked to an alternative. And in Trump, they have thrown the dice and said, let's see what will happen. And then on top of all of that, there's another reality that I don't know that my European friends know, is that the campaign finance system in the United States is very, very, very different than yours here or that exists in most European countries. 15 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court rendered a horrible, horrible decision on a case called Citizens United. And what the case was about is that billionaires and many Republicans went to the court and they said, you know what? The First Amendment says I have freedom of speech, but you, the government, has put regulations in place which limit my ability to do things like advertise on television to get people elected or to defeat people. You are limiting my First Amendment rights. And in a terrible decision, the Supreme Court said, yes, billionaires, you're right. You have the right to buy elections. And that is precisely where we are today. Today, recently, Elon Musk spent $270 million to elect Donald Trump as president. Got it? $270 million. Other Republican billionaires also spent a lot of money. So Musk made his investment, and his reward was that he became the most important person in government. But it's not just the Republicans. In the Democratic Party, you also have billionaires who play a very, very important role. And I know that in Europe there is great concern, as there should be, at the atrocities now taking place in Gaza. And you're saying, where is the United States government? Why isn't Congress doing more? Well, there are a number of reasons why. But one key reason, and I speak as the person who introduced the legislation to stop all military aid to Netanyahu, that but I did it twice, and I'll do it again, but we only had 15 votes on one occasion and 16 votes on another. So you're thinking, why is that? I got 0 Republican votes and only 15 out of 47 Democratic votes. Why? Did Democrats, Republicans not understand what is going on in Gaza? They not read the papers. They don't hear about the starvation of children. They know. But what you should know is that right now, if you're a Republican and you stand up to Donald Trump, on the next day, Elon Musk and others will say, okay, you are going to be primaried and you are going to lose your next election. Because Trump and I, Elon Musk, we have unlimited amounts of money and we are going to defeat you. And on the Democratic side, you have what is called super PACs. And these are the institutions, organizations that billionaires can pour unlimited amounts of money. And if somebody gets up and says, you know what, I am not going to vote to continue the war against the Palestinian people, on that next day, groups like AIPAC and other super PACs will say, oh, really? We are going to primary you, and we also have unlimited amounts of money. So when you understand to understand American politics, one has got to absolutely understand the role that a corrupt campaign finance system is playing. Bottom line is that billionaires in both parties have enormous influence over legislation and what goes on in the United States Congress. So where do we go from here? Well, it ain't easy. Those of us in the progressive movement in the United States, we're taking on the oligarchs, we're taking on the Republican Party, we're taking on corporate America, we're taking on the Democratic leadership, we're taking on corporate media. Not an easy job. But what we understand is that at the end of the day, the way we are going to make change is by building a strong grassroots movement. And what I have been doing in the last few months, along with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is we have been running all around the country, and I think showing America and the world that there is enormous opposition to what Trump is doing in many ways. Now, we have lists of many, many millions of supporters, and we send out emails inviting people to come to the rallies. And so we know who comes and who doesn't come. But one of the interesting things about these rallies, which have drawn just huge turnouts, I mean, in LA we had 36,000, in Denver 34,000. In a rural community called Folsom, California, we had 30,000. In the most conservative state in America, Idaho, we had 12,000. Another conservative state, Utah, we had 20,000, et cetera, et cetera. What we are showing is there is mass opposition to Trump's agenda, and it's not just progressives. At these meetings, as we know who comes in, about 10% of the people who are coming are Republicans, about 20% who are coming are independents. So I think ordinary Americans are catching on that what Trump is doing is not good for our country and not good for working people. Now, what we have pledged to do is not just to go into a community and do a rally. That's important. And it's important because people, especially in rural states and in conservative areas, they look around them and say, oh my God, there are 10, 15,000 people. This is great. I'm not alone. I can go forward. Gives them confidence. That's important. But what we have pledged to do and are doing is saying, you know, we're not just coming in and leaving. We're going to build something at the grassroots level. So we have hired a number of organizers in all of the communities that we have been to, and in other communities that we have not. Now, our immediate focus is on what is called a reconciliation bill, Trump's big, beautiful bill. You understand what's in that bill, all right. And this is really a disgraceful bill. At a time when the rich have never had it so good, this bill gives over $1 trillion in tax breaks to the wealthy and very large corporations. And it pays for that by making massive cuts to Medicaid, which is our public health program for low-income people, massive cuts to nutrition programs. We got a lot of kids in America who are hungry. And school lunch programs, breakfast programs help them. Senior citizens have programs that help them with nutrition. So massive cuts to health care, massive cuts to nutrition, massive cuts to education. In other words, all of the things that we should be doing, they are doing exactly the opposite. Instead of demanding that the billionaires start paying their fair share of taxes, getting a huge tax break. Instead of making public colleges and universities tuition free, they are cutting back on education and instead of making sure that no one in America goes hungry, cutting back on programs that stave off hunger. So our immediate task right now is to do everything we can to defeat this legislation. It passed the House by one vote. It's now in the Senate. I am sure I will be dealing with it next week. We'll start the process in the Senate. So we're trying to build a groundswell of support against it. Then what we are also doing simultaneously is there are about 15 districts. There are 435 members of the House. There are 15 or 20 districts where Republicans won by very small margins, few points. And we're focusing on those districts because if we can win or turn around 3 or 4 seats, Democrats will regain control over the House. And what that means, the importance of that, is not that I think the Democrats will do anything great with control of the House, but they will be able to stop Trump's horrific agenda. So it is very important that we do that. And the third thing that we're doing, which is ultimately the most important, in America today, and I think, again, it is not different in the UK or around Europe, there is mass dissatisfaction with the political system. People do not think government is representing them. And they say, you talk about democracy, you tell me to vote every 2 years or every 4 years, and what the hell does democracy do for me? I'm falling further and further behind. So don't talk to me about democracy. So what we have got to do is build a political movement which has an agenda which speaks to the needs of the working class of America and the means to implement that agenda. If we could even do just one thing, which is to have a healthcare system which is not designed to make huge profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies, but is designed to provide quality healthcare to all people. If we could just do that one thing, you would revitalize American democracy, not only improve the health of the American people, as important as that is. People would say, hey, I voted for something, something real happened. I can go to the doctor when I am sick. My mom gets the prescription drugs she needs. Wow, government can actually do something for me. And that is... And when we talk about an agenda for the future, and let me close on this note, we have to understand that Trump and Musk are incredibly radical. They are moving furiously to transform this world, to expand global oligarchy and authoritarianism. And we cannot be defenders of the status quo. We have got to be equally bold. And let me just give you one example of what I mean. Musk and others are very, very strong proponents of artificial intelligence and robotics. And everything being equal, AI and robotics is going to change the job that you do and you do and you do in very significant ways within the next 10 years, 15 years. So the question that we have got to ask ourselves, very simple question, who is going to benefit from that technological revolution? Is it simply going to be a situation where Musk and his friends say, by the way, sorry, we got a machine to replace you, you're out on the streets? Or are we going to have a world community which says, you know, technology is good if it benefits working class people and ordinary people? And what does that mean? It means that technology is creating new wealth. We should be thinking about substantially lowering the work week that people right now have. And in the United States, some of the unions are now talking correctly about a 32-hour work week with no loss of pay. We should hold out the vision that with all of this new creation of wealth, there should be nobody in this world over a period of time who lives in poverty or economic misery. You know, we are not living in the 1820s. We're not living in the 1920s. We are living in the year 2025. The possibilities are endless in terms of improving human life, expanding our life expectancy, how long we can live, in curing so many terrible diseases which take our loved ones. So we have got to have a vision based on mass grassroots efforts and democratic movements that demand and create a world and governments which work for everybody, not just Elon Musk and his friends. Thank you all very much.